Okay, so sorry, my voice. So we provided you guys with these practice exam worksheets, right? If you don't have access to this, you can find it on Canvas under week 13. It's the term 1 practice test, right? So what I'm going to do is, obviously, if you have access to this already, you should be able to see the questions. And I do realize that some of you might be trying to practice this and not knowing whether your answers are correct or not, or why the answers are correct or not. So I'm going to work through these. And the setup right here isn't the best, so I'm going to need you to just bear with me as far as possible. All right, so if we take a look at this first question, so the question says, which is not a ratio? So I'll make that bigger over here on this yellow sheet. They give us 4 options. So A is 1:2:3. Then B, we've got 2:4. Then C, we've got 4:5. And lastly, D, 4 every 10 white, there are 2 blue. Okay, so basically only one of these is not representing a ratio. Okay, now the first one, this one is fine. Even though there are 3 values, it is possible to have a ratio set between more than 2 things, so that's okay. The second one, it's not written in mathematical form, but instead they've written it out in words. 4:5 just means 4:5. So this is also true. If we look at the last one, again, this is again just a ratio written in word form. For every 10 white, there are 2 blue. Again, this just means 10:2, which is also true. But if we look at this one, the convention that was used is wrong. We don't use a comma to represent a ratio. So this is just writing a decimal. So the answer is B, 2.4 is not a ratio. Okay, let's look at the next question. Okay, so we're going to take a look at question number 2. Question number 2, we have these oranges and cherries, and the question reads, what is the ratio of cherries to oranges? So really, what this question is trying to test is, do you know which value we put first? So which value goes on the left of that ratio sign and which goes on the right, okay? So if we put the sign, easy way to remember it is the word that came first in the question was cherries. And the word that came after was oranges. And then it becomes very simple. Just count them, right? So cherries is first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cherries. Is 2. On the right hand side, 2 oranges. So we just write 2. 5:2. The only thing that I do want you guys to remember with these kinds of questions is your answer needs to be in the simplest form, okay? So I'm going to do a slightly different example over here. Let's say we have stars. This is very bad stars, but you get the idea, okay? And circles, okay? So let's say 1. If I asked you to write a ratio for this, let's say I asked you to write the ratio of circles to stars. So remember, I'm saying circles first. Then we would count these, right? So I'll make a space on the side to answer that. So the amount of circles is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we put 6 over there. Is to 1, 2, 3, 4. 6:4. So this already is the correct ratio, but the problem with that is that it's not in the simplest form. So I need to look what is the biggest value that can divide into 6 and 4. So in this case it would be 2. So 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 4 2 times. So this represents the same ratio, but this is the simplest form. Okay, so keep that in mind for future questions. Okay, Now, if we look at question 3 is a continuation of question 2. So over here, question 3 reads, refer to question 2, write the ratio of oranges to fruits. So be careful here. They're not saying oranges to cherries. They're saying oranges to fruits, meaning both cherries and oranges represent fruit. So it means you're taking a part of this fraction to the whole, right? So now, let me again get my sheet over here. So we're going to say oranges. It's the first word that popped up. To fruits, okay? So if we look again at the picture, we already know how many oranges we have. There's only 2 oranges. And if we look at the fruits now, we're going to count the oranges and the cherries together, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 2 is to 7. Okay, there's no number that divides into 2 and 7 perfectly. So that means this is already in the simplest form. And that would be the correct answer. 2 is to 7, which is C in the options. Okay, this was question 3. All right, so we are already on to question 4. Question 4 is very straightforward compared to the previous ones, especially now that we already know how to do it. So question 4 says, there are 10 books in 2 boxes. Remember, we can write it down what comes first, right? So we're going to do books is to boxes, and according to the questions, number 4, we have 10 books to 2 boxes. So that's 10 books to 2 boxes. Now, with this question, when you look at the options, the option over here, 10 is to 2 is already there, right? I am going to point out that that could be simplified. The answer could have been 5 is to 1, since 2 goes into 2 once and it goes into 10 5 times. But since the option 5 is to 1 is not available, then the correct answer is A, 10 is to 2, as we did over here. Okay, so now question 5 is the first question where we see where we're really going to do more than one step to be able to find the correct answer, or at least to do that the proper way. So I'm going to use my sheet over here to show you how to do this, okay? So we've got a little table. There's some values on the left hand side and some values on the right hand side. Now, this is still related to the types of questions we just did in the previous one, in that it's still got to do with ratios, okay? So we have a ratio, and if we look at the top row, which is the simplest one, right? This is the actual ratio. The ratio is 3 is to 5. And if you look down this line, you'll see that all of them actually are just multiples of that ratio. So if you look at 6 is to 10, right? 3 goes into 6 2 times. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 3 goes into 9 3 times. 5 goes into 15 3 times. 3 goes into 12 4 times. 5 goes into 20 4 times. So you can actually see that all of these are just multiples of the first ratio, okay? So how you would solve this is, you want to check how many times does 3 go into 15. So 3 goes into 15, you can say 15 divided by 3 is equal to, so 15 divided by 3, this equals 5. So that means that they've multiplied the ratio by 5. So if I multiply the 3 by 5, I need to multiply this value also by 5. So now I'm going to say 5 times 5 equals 25. So my missing number is 25. Now let's look at our options for question 5. And as you can see over here for question 5, we do have 25 as an option, which is C. So let me just explain that again. We see how many times does this number fit perfectly into that number. So 15 divided by 3 gave us 5. And then we take this and we multiply it by the other side of the ratio. So 5 times 5 gives us 25. Simple. Okay, now on to question 6. Over here, they've given us a table, and on top of it, it reads, in a garden, the landscape architect designed that for every 2 white roses, 3 red roses must be planted. Is the table correct? Explain. Okay, I mean, yeah. So if we look at that, it's already just showing white 2, red 3, And then obviously as we move along, we'll just add, if we were to complete this table, then the next value here would be 4. And as we add 2 over here, we'd add 3 at the bottom. So this one would be 3 plus 3 is 6, and so on, right? But as for whether the table is correct or not, then yes, because for every 2 white roses, there's 3 red roses. And so that's pretty straightforward. You just say, yes, there is 3 red roses for every white rose. I think that's actually a very straightforward question. Okay, so question 7 might not seem very clear. It just says complete the table. You've got some values on the left hand side, 2, 4, 6, 10, and you have one single value of 7 next to the 2. I feel like it's unclear because they don't tell you the relationship between the left and the right. But if we're going on what we've been doing so far, every question has been about a ratio, right? So they want you to assume that the ratio here is 2:7, and then apply that ratio all the way down for the rest, right? So for every 2 on the left, there should be 7 on the right. Now, that's pretty straightforward. Here's 1, 2, right? There's one single 2, so there's one single 7. Now what you should do is you should ask yourself, how many times does 2 go into 4? So that would be 2, because 4 divided by 2 is equal to 2, right? So I'll write that down as a little step here. 4 divided by 2 equals 2, right? So then if I say 2, I take this number and I multiply it by the right hand side of the ratio. So 2 times 7 equals 14. So that means when the left hand side is 4, the right hand side should be 14. Now we're going to apply the same process all the way through, right? So let's do the same for the 6. We're going to take this 6 and divide by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. Then we're going to take the 3 and we're going to multiply it with the right hand side. So we're going to say 3 times 7 equals 21. Okay, so then the 21 goes into here. Just make that clear. 21. Then the last one, the same process. I'm going to take 10 and divide it by 2. And this gives us 5. And then we're going to take this number and multiply it by the right hand side. So we're going to say 5 times 7 equals 35. And then we'll fill in 35 on the right hand side of the table. So the steps are very straightforward. Divide the value on the left with the left hand side of the ratio. That will give you an answer. Take that answer and multiply it with the right hand side of the ratio. Okay, so before I actually get into this, there's an error in this question in that they say how many dogs are there if there are 30 dogs. So they mention how many dogs, but then say the amount of dogs. So this here should be cats, the first one. Sorry guys. So just change that to cats. If there are 30 dogs, right? Now, this question, I'm going to read the whole thing out now. It says, in an animal shelter, for every 3 dogs, there are 5 cats. How many cats are there if there are 30 dogs? Show your working. So, okay, again, let's write down dogs is to cats. So they first mention dogs. To cats. Now, this question has 2 parts to it. The first part is being able, apologies, being able to write out the ratio. And then secondly, using the ratio to find the missing value if we scale this ratio up or down, okay? So they say 3 dogs to 5 cats. And then they go on to say, what if there's 30 dogs? How many cats? So we want to know how many cats if there are 30 dogs. And this process is the same as in the previous question. We are going to take this amount, right, on this left-hand side and divide it with the left-hand side of the ratio. That will give us an answer. And then we'll use that answer and multiply it with the right-hand side of the ratio. So what I'm saying is 30 divided by 3 equals 10. Then we're going to take this 10 and multiply it with the right hand side. 10 times 5 equals 50 cats. Okay, moving on. Sorry, I had to take some cough medicine. Now, question 9. Question 9 says, if there are 2 cups in one pint, how many pints are there in 6 cups? Show your working. All right. So again, you can write this out as cups is to pint. And again, they say 2 cups is to 1 pint, right? And then they go on to tell us that, well, we have 6 cups. So how many pints do we have? Again, this process doesn't change. You've already seen it in the previous question. It's a good idea for you to pause the video, try to answer the question yourself, and then see if you got it right. So this is the way that we would go on and solve it. We take the 6, it's on the left-hand side, and divide it with the left-hand side of the ratio. So 6 divided by 2 equals 3. And then just take this number and multiply with the right-hand side. 3 times 1 equals 3 pints. Easy. Okay, question number 10. So question number 10 says, where is it? There we go. Alyazia can bake 4 muffins in 20 minutes. How many muffins can she bake in an hour? Show your working. So let's do muffins to minutes firstly. So muffins to minutes. So how many muffins did they say in how many minutes? They say 4 muffins in 20 minutes. So 4 in 20. Okay. Now, where they try to catch you out here is that they give us the ratio in minutes, but then they mention hours. But at this level, you should be able to tell me how many minutes there are in an hour. So 1 hour equals, we should all know, 60 minutes. Okay. So in this case, what I want you to take note of, what's different to the previous questions. In the previous questions, they kept on giving us the left-hand side as the known value, and then we would try the right-hand side. But in this case, they tell us how many minutes, which is on the right-hand side, and we need to find the value on the left. So they tell us that she has 60 minutes, or they want to know in 60 minutes, how many muffins can she make? So what we need to do now, it's the same process, except I'm not going to divide the left-hand side first. I'm going to divide the right-hand side first. Okay. So I'm going to say this number 60 is on the right. I'm going to divide it with the right-hand side of the ratio. So 60 divided by 20 equals 3. Then I'm going to take this, same like in the previous questions. I'm going to say 3 multiplied with the left-hand side. So 3 times 4 equals 12. That means in 60 minutes, she can bake 12 muffins. Okay, so question 11. Rashid can paint 2 woodcrafts in 16 minutes. How long does it take him to paint 1 woodcraft? Show your working. Now, the process remains pretty much the same. Again, we're doing woodcrafts to minutes. We know that he does 2 woodcrafts in 16 minutes. And now we want to know how long does it take him to do 1. The only thing that's different in this question to the ones we did previously is that in this question we are scaling downwards instead of upwards. Now when we were scaling upwards, we would take the large number at the bottom and then divide. And then we take that answer and then multiply it by the left. But here, because we've scaled downwards, we're going to do the reverse of that, right? So in this case, we're going to take the larger number on top, the actual scale itself, and then divide by 1. So 2 divided by 1 is 2. So the value that we're dividing by is 2. And then all we're going to do on the other side, we're going to divide by the same value. So 16 divided by 2 is equal to 8 minutes. So 1:8. That means for every one woodcraft that he paints, it takes him 8 minutes. Alright, so in question 16, this is, sorry, not 16, question 12, right? So in question 12, Dave can type 40 words in 1 minute. Saif can type 90 words in 2 minutes. Who is faster? So this question is about unit rate. So we said unit rate is when we're writing a ratio in terms of 1 of something. Okay, so basically it's just comparing. Now, the first one is already given to us in unit rate. They say Dave can type 40 words in 1 minute. Okay, so we're going to write that in. I made a little table here so that we can compare. We've got words to minutes. For Dave, we said that's 40 words in 1 minute. As for Saif, right, in question 12, they say that Saif can type 90 words in 2 minutes. So we'll put here 90 in 2. Now, just like in the previous question, all we really need to do here is divide the left side by the right side to make this into unit rate. So 90 divided by 2 would be 45 is to 1. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 90, 45 times. So that means Saif does 45 words in 1 minute. Since he does more words in a minute than Dave does, that means that Saif is faster. So the questions that remain now are all just operations. So I won't really use the sheet itself. You can just write out the questions over here. The first question was dividing 126 by 3. So I've written it out like this so that we can use long division. Okay, so remember the number we're dividing by goes on the outside, and the number that's being divided, the bigger value here, goes on the inside. Now, firstly, if we try to just put 3 into the first value, 3 can't go into 1, so I can't just use 1. 3 can't fit into 1. So I'm going to use the first two values, which is 12, right? 3 goes into 12 how many times? So you need to now check how many times can 3 fit into 12. So it's 3, 6, 9, 12, which is 4 times. So we put that 4 on top. Then we take this 4, multiply by 3. It gives us 12. And then we're going to subtract that 12. So 12 minus 12 leaves nothing left. But we still have the 6 on the top. So I'm going to bring it down. Now I need to check. How many times does 3 go into 6? The answer to that is 2 times. And 2 times 3 is equal to 6. So when we subtract this, it's finished. There's no more numbers to divide. So the answer is 42, the value on top. Okay? Let's do the right hand side. So question 14, against the same thing. We had 154 divided by 11. Now, just like with the first one, you can't take this 2-digit number 11 and divide by 1. So we're going to use the 1 and the 5, which is 15. So the question is, how many times can 11, right, go into 15? And the answer is only once, because if you add another one, it will become 22, which is too big. So that means 11 goes into 15 one time, right? Then we're going to say 1 times 11 is equal to 11. And then we're going to subtract. Okay, so 15 minus 11 gives us 4. But don't forget that we still have another 4 on the top here. So we're going to bring this down, put it next to this one. Now we need to check how many times does 11 go into 44. So let's check. 11, if I add another one, it's going to be 22. If I add another one, 33, then 44. So it goes 4 times. So I'm going to take that 4, write it on the top. And then just to make sure, we're going to say 4 times 11 gives us 44. And if we take that away, there's nothing left. So the answer is 14. Okay, and then question 15 and 16 is about adding decimals, okay? Now, adding decimals is pretty straightforward. It's the same as adding normal numbers. The only thing is when you write out these values, if you put them in column method, make sure that all of the correct values are underneath each other. So whole numbers or units underneath each other, tenths underneath each other, hundreds underneath each other, like this, okay? So if we write 1.23, when I add, so this is a whole number 4 over here, so I'm going to put that directly under the 1. There's a decimal over here, put the decimal directly underneath, and we've got 5 under the 2 and 6 under that 3 over there. And then I'm going to make a line for my answer, and in here as well I need to make sure that I have the decimal point directly under, and then we just add as normal. So 2 plus 3 plus 6 gives us 9, 2 plus 5 gives us 7, decimal point is already there. 1 plus 4 is equal to 5. So 5.79. Pretty straightforward. Then we're going to do the same on this side. So here the only difference is they didn't write it out mathematically, but they verbally said add 9.78 and 4.56, meaning we're going to use addition and we're going to do it exactly the same as the left hand side. So 9.78. Make sure to put the same values underneath each other. So the 4 goes here, point underneath that point, put the 5 over there, 6 over here. Only thing is here, some these values will go over 10, meaning we're going to add values to the next 10th section. So over here, 8 plus 4, so 8 plus 4, 8 plus 6 is equal to 14. So put down the 4 and carry the 1. Then 1 plus 7 is equal to 8. And 8 plus 5 is equal to 13. Carry the 1. 1 plus 9 is equal to 10. And 10 plus 4 is equal to 14. So 14.34. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Okay, so in question 15 and 16 we did addition of decimals. In question 17 and 18 we are doing subtraction. Again, the only thing that you need to remember is when you write down these in column form, make sure to put the correct values underneath each other. So over here, if I rewrite this, I can write it as 4.56 like this, minus underneath, make sure the 1 is under the 4, point, the 2 under the 5, and the 3 under the 6. And then do as you would normally do your subtraction. Make sure to put the point down so that it's there when you complete your answer. So let's go. 6 minus 3 is just 3. 5 minus 2 is just 3. And 4 minus 1 is 3. The point is already there, so that saved us from making any kind of mistake. You're going to do the same on this side. Be careful with this one. They say subtract 1.34 from 4.12. When you see this word from, it means that the value that appeared first here needs to be written second. And it also makes sense because we're going to subtract the smaller number from the bigger number. So we're going to go 4.12 minus 1.34. With this question, you need to be careful because we're going to need to do some borrowing. Reason being is 2 can't subtract 4. That means I need to go and borrow. This becomes 0. This becomes 12. 12 minus 4 gives us 8. Now we have 0 over here. Obviously 0 can't subtract 3. So I need to borrow. This will become a 3. And this becomes a 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. And then we had a 3 left over here. 3 minus 1 is just equal to 2. 2.78. Finished. Okay, so question 19 asks you what is the reciprocal of 2 over 3. So I'm just going to quickly explain what the reciprocal is. It's basically the inverse, okay? If you don't understand what that word means, I'm going to show you now. If we have a fraction a over b, okay, then the reciprocal of a over b is b over a, meaning I just switch the numerator, the number on top, with the denominator or the number at the bottom. So for example, here the question says 2 over 3. So the reciprocal of 2 over 3 is equal to 3 over 2. All I did was switch the numbers around. If the fraction is 2 over 3, the reciprocal will be 3 over 2. So if you have a over b, b over a. Doesn't matter which number you have, you just switch them around if you want to find the reciprocal. Okay, now question 20 and 21 are linked to each other. In question 20, they want you to take or write the fraction 2 and 4 over 9 as an improper fraction. And then when you have that answer for question 21, they want you to write the reciprocal of that. Okay, so let's just speak about the types of fractions here. This fraction over here is what we call a mixed number fraction. It's called mixed number because it's a mix of a whole number and a fraction. Okay, but an improper fraction is when we have a fraction where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. Okay, this is very easy to do. So the fraction that we have so far is 2 and 4 over 9. If I want to turn this into an improper fraction, it means I'm not going to have a whole number. I take the whole number and I multiply with the denominator. So 2 times 9 gives me 18, okay? Then I take that answer and I add it to this number on top. So now I have 18 plus I add the numerator, which is 4. 18 plus 4 gives me 22. And the denominator doesn't change. It stays 9. So we take the whole number, multiply by the denominator, add the numerator, and we take that answer and write it on top. And at the bottom, the denominator stays the same. Now, the next question says, what is the reciprocal of your answer for question 20? So if the answer in question 22 over 9, this was our answer, then the reciprocal, we said in the previous section, the reciprocal means we're just going to flip this over. So the reciprocal of 22 over 9 is 9 over 22. Okay, so for question 22 and 23, my apologies, I didn't write the number over here, but this is 22, this is 23. We're working with multiplying fractions, okay? Now, the rule for multiplying fractions, multiplying is actually the easiest part when it comes to fractions, because you multiply numerator by numerator and denominator by denominator. Now, what does that mean? It just means you multiply the top number by the top number and the bottom number by the bottom number. Very easy, okay? So let's do this. And we've got 3 over, mistake. We've got 2 over 3 multiplied by 4 over 5. All we're going to do is take the top number. 2 times 4 gives us 8. Put the line again, division line, and then 3 times 5 gives us 15, and finish. So we multiply the tops with each other, the numerators with each other. 2 times 4 gives us 8. 3 times 5 gives us 15. Finish. Now, for question 23, there's one extra step, because they say multiply 4 over 9 by 3 over 8, then simplify, meaning we want the fraction to be in the simplest form at the end. So we're going to start by following the same process that we did here. So it's 4 over 9 multiplied by 3 over 8. So numerator times numerator. 4 times 3 gives me 12. And then 9 times 8 gives me 72. So now I need to check what's the biggest number that goes into 12 and 72, and then use that to simplify. So from here I can see the biggest value is 12. 12 goes into 12 one time, and 12 goes into 72 6 times. Okay, now you might not know immediately what the highest number is. Sometimes you might start with a smaller number. Like if you went with 6, you could say 6 goes into 12 2 times, and 6 goes into 72 12 times, and then afterwards you could simplify that again. But in the end, you'd still end up with 1 over 6, the simplest form. Okay, so now question 24, we have two fractions and we're going to divide them. When we did the multiplication, it was very straightforward, but when it comes to the division of fractions, it's not as straightforward, okay? There is one step we need to follow at the start before we go on to complete the question. So I did teach in the class this method, and you can use this You can use this to remember what you're supposed to do. So we call it the KFC method. Okay, so I'll tell you what this stands for. The K is for keep, the F is for flip, and the C is for change. Okay, so what do we keep, what do we flip, and what do we change? We keep the first fraction, we flip the second fraction, and we change this from division to multiplication. Okay, so let me write this out quickly. Originally the question is saying 8 over 9 divide by 2 over 3. Okay, but if we apply this rule, keep, flip, change, we keep the first fraction, which is 8 over 9. We flip the second fraction, so instead of 2 over 3, we're going to write 3 over 2. And then the last step, we're going to change the sign, so instead of divide, we're going to use multiply. And now we can go on and solve this as a normal multiplication. 8 times 3 gives me 24 over 9 times 2 gives me 18. I can simplify this. Seems the biggest number that fits into both of these would be 6. So 6 goes into 24 4 times, and 6 goes into 18 3 times. The simplest form would be 4 over 3. So remember this, KFC, keep, flip, change. Keep the first fraction, flip the second fraction, and change it from division to multiplication. Okay, question 25 is a little bit more complex. It's combining how we learned how to change from mixed number to improper and then doing the division. Okay, so firstly, let's rewrite this as a improper fraction. Now we said to do that, you're going to take the whole number and multiply by the denominator. So 2 times 5, that gives us 10. Okay, and then we're going to take this 10 and add the numerator. So 10 plus 2 gives us 12. So this fraction over here now is 12 over 5. And we are dividing by 6 over 10. Then what we're going to do next, this is a division. So again, we're going to use that rule, KFC, keep, flip, change. What are we keeping? Keeping the first fraction. What are we flipping? The second fraction. So flip this, it becomes 10 over 6. And what are we changing? The sign from division to multiplication. And then 12 times 10 is 120. 5 times 6 is equal to 30. And then we can just do the division here. 120 divided by 30 is equal to 4. Finished. Okay, so this question, they want you to compare the two fractions and say which one is the bigger fraction. Now, you can't directly compare two fractions if their denominators are different. So the trick is, these numbers at the bottom need to be the same, okay? Now, sometimes you might know the answer, but this is how we show that it's, how we show our working here. So what I want to do is, this 5, right? I can multiply this by a number so that the 5 becomes 10, right? So the question that I want to ask myself is, what do I multiply 5 with to get to 10? So the answer to that, obviously, is 2. Okay, so if I multiply the denominator by 2, for this to stay an equivalent fraction, I also need to multiply the numerator. So that means I'm going to take this multiplication of 2 for the numerator and the denominator, okay? So this becomes 2 times 2, which is 4, and 5 times 2, which is 10. Okay, now we can compare. Both of them have the same denominator. And then we can easily see that the numerator on the right hand side is bigger. So that means the bigger fraction is 6 over 10. So 6 over 10 is larger than 2 over 5. because 2 over 5 is the same as 4 over 10. Okay, now the next question is a bit trickier because they give us two fractions, right? The first fraction that they give us is 3 over 7. This is question 27. They give us 3 over 7, and they give us another fraction which is 2 over 5. And they want us to compare this using the signs greater than, less than, or equal to, right? Now, what makes this one a bit more tricky than the previous question here is there was a number that I could directly multiply 5 with to get to 10, but 5 can't go into 7 and 7 can't go into 5, so that makes this one a bit trickier. So what I normally do is, to make this easy, I just multiply each fraction by the opposite denominator. So what I mean is, I'm going to multiply this fraction by 5, and I'm going to multiply this fraction by 7. Okay, so this one by the opposite denominator, which is 5, and this one by the opposite denominator, which is 7. And then see what happens. Okay, 3 times 5 will give me 15 over 7 times 5 is 35, and on this side 7 times 2 is 14 over 7 times 5 is 35. And now I can compare them because you can see the the denominators are the same, and then I just need to check which one has a bigger numerator. So 13 over 35 is bigger than 14 over 35, so we use this sign. Remember, the open side means bigger and the closed side means smaller. So this fraction is bigger than 2 over 5. Okay, now on to question 28. We're doing a fraction of a whole. This is very straightforward. How we go about doing this is, you need to remember that we can rewrite whole numbers as a fraction, and the process is the same for any whole number. Any whole number can be written as a fraction over 1. So when I rewrite this, I've got 3 over 7 multiplied by 14 over 1. And we've already seen how to multiply fractions. We said numerator, or top times top, over denominator times denominator, which is bottom multiplied by bottom. So 3 times 14, that's 42 over 7 times 1, which is 7. And then we see if we can simplify. In this case, we can. 7 goes into 42 6 times, and 7 goes into 7 once. So technically 42 divided by 7 is just equal to 6. Okay, that's a very simple question. Now if we look at question 29 and question 30, it's the same process. I'm going to show the question from our sheet, and then I'll write down show you how we fill in those details down here. Okay, I think I need to use another marker. This one is drying out. So question 29 reads, Muhammad spent 3/5 of his allowance on food. If he has 30 dirhams allowance money, how much did he spend it on food? So it's just a fraction of a whole. So we're going to say 3/5 of 30. So in this case, 3 over 5 multiplied by 30. Just like in the previous question, if we have a whole number, we can write it over 1. Okay, so we're going to change this to 3 over 5 times 30 over 1. And now we do the multiplication. 3 times 30 is 90. 5 times 1 is 5. And then from here, we do the division. We check how many times does 5 go into 90, and that would be 18 times, because 90 divided by 5 equals 18. So that means he used 18 dirhams of his money on food. So 18 AED, since we're working with currency. Okay, now let's look at the last question. Last question reads, Sheikh has solved 2 out of 5 of her homework. If her homework has 30 questions, how much was she able to answer? Again, this is a fraction of a whole. So we're going to say 2 over 5 times 30. Again, the 30 is a whole number, so I'm going to put it over 1 like we did in the last question. So 2 over 5 multiplied by 30 over 1. Now we just do the multiplication. 2 times 30 gives me 60. And 5 times 1 is 5. And then this is just a straight division. 60 divided by 5 is equal... How many times is going to there? 12 times. Okay. So that means she was able to solve 12 questions. All right, I hope this is able to help you. Remember, you can just rewind back if there wasn't anything you understood. Again, I would advise as you're going through these, you can try pausing them and then solving the question yourself and then playing it to see if you did it correctly. And have a nice day and all of the best with your exams.